At 10:36 on a Sunday night in August, Ryan Borgwardt texted his wife. He told her he'd snuck out to the lake to watch the northern lights. She wasn't happy about it. "That would have been nice to know," she texted him. "I was beginning to wonder why you weren't home." He quickly apologized. She said, "Nothing new. I should be used to it by now. So many nights, I have no idea where you are when it's late." He promised to work on their communication and added that the northern lights were pink. And then at 10:49 p.m., Ryan texted his wife, "I love you. Good night." She texted back that she loved him too and told him to be safe. He said he'd be heading back to the shore soon, and then he disappeared. Now, if you heard that story without knowing anything that came next, you'd probably think that this was a tragic accident on a dark lake at night, and that Ryan probably drowned. And that's exactly what Ryan was counting on. Hi, and welcome back to the channel. Scareful stories are stories that make you think, make you wonder, and maybe make you a little more careful. If you enjoy stories like this one, please hit the like button, comment, and subscribe. Those little things really help small channels like mine grow. And now, the Scareful story of Ryan Borgwardt. So, who is Ryan Borgwardt? At the time of the incident, Ryan was 44 years old and living in Watertown, Wisconsin, with his wife Emily and their 3 children. Ryan owned a woodworking company. Summer meant backyard barbecues, swimming in the pool, kayaking on beautiful lakes in Wisconsin, and from the outside, it looked like a pretty good life. But by the time 2024 rolled around, something had been rotting underneath all of it for a long time. When investigators would eventually sit down with Ryan, he told them that he felt like a failure at his marriage, a failure at communication, a failure at everything, a failure at being the person his family needed him to be. He also felt like a failure financially. He told the investigators that he'd racked up roughly $75,000 in credit card debt and $130,000 in business debt. He said that he was working long hours and that he was beginning to think he might have a heart attack. He was struggling just to stay awake when he was driving. It was in this state of mind that he started to develop his plan. He described the scheme as a crazy emotional dream. But what Ryan built was not a dream. It was a blueprint on how to escape his life and start over. Can anyone say midlife crisis? It all started in December of 2023. His marriage was failing. He felt that his kids no longer wanted to do things with him. And Ryan decided to join a dating website. And there, he met a woman named Katya. She told him that she was from the Ukraine, and they began talking about conditions there since the Russian invasion. And they started trading translated messages back and forth and found a friend. By February of 2024, he later said that he had fallen in love with her. By April, he was researching how to fake his own death. Lots of people daydream about starting a new life, but Ryan didn't just think about it. He didn't just Google it once and move on. According to the criminal complaint, Ryan researched how other people had successfully disappeared. He looked up lake drowning deaths. He researched how deep a body needs to be underwater before it wouldn't resurface. He was doing his homework. When investigators eventually found Katya's messages on his laptop, they showed that she was actually hesitant about the plan, and she didn't like the idea of him faking his death, but she agreed to meet him anyway. In January of 2024, so this is 1 month after joining the dating website, Ryan took out a brand new $375,000 life insurance policy. He later said that it was to protect his family just in case something happened to him, or in case he was actually planning on making it look like something happened to him. He listed his immediate family as beneficiaries. He also later obtained a second passport. He reported his first one lost and got a new one issued, but kept that completely secret. One more thing that he did, and I think this is really fascinating, and you have to wonder if his wife knew, but it later came out that he also had his vasectomy reversed, which makes you wonder, what were he and Katja talking about? Him going and starting a new life there and having children with her? I guess we may never know. And then there's what he did on the day he disappeared. A forensic analysis of his laptop revealed that on August 11th of 2024, Ryan replaced the hard drive on his laptop. He cleared his browser history and he synced everything to the iCloud. He changed his email addresses that were linked to his financial accounts, and he made inquiries about moving money to foreign banks, and he purchased an airline gift card. He did all of that on the same day that he went to church with his family. So church in the morning and fake my death at night was his to-do list. He'd been watching the weather reports for weeks, waiting for the right conditions, and he decided that August 11th was his night. On August 11th, Ryan got to Green Lake around 10 p.m. He chose Green Lake because it's the deepest lake in all of Wisconsin, and he knew what that meant for a body that needed to never be found. He parked his van near Dodge Memorial Park, and before he kayaked out, he stashed an electric bike, helmet, and backpack in the tree line near the van. Then he loaded up the kayak. He had a tackle box, fishing pole, a net, a duffel bag, his wallet with his ID and keys inside, and one more thing, an inflatable kiddie raft. He paddled out to what he believed was the deepest part of the lake, and then, according to his own account, he tossed his cell phone into the water, inflated the raft, and climbed in, and then he flipped the kayak. He paddled back to shore in the dark on the raft, leaving behind a floating capsized kayak, a life jacket, and every physical prop he could think of to help sell the story that he had gone into the lake. In his own words, from the criminal complaint, everything hinged on me dying in the lake, and the whole idea was to sell the death. He retrieved the e-bike from the tree line, and then he rode about 70 miles through the Wisconsin night all the way to Madison, where he boarded a Greyhound bus to Toronto. He had that second passport and $5,500 in his pocket. At the Toronto airport, he boarded a flight to Paris. From Paris, he flew to the country of Georgia, wedged between Russia and Turkey. Not the state of Georgia, the country, and that is where Katja was waiting for him. Back in Watertown at 5:12 a.m. the next morning, Emily, his wife, woke up alone and started texting, "Babe, where are you?" Receiving no answer, Emily called 911. Deputies arrived at Dodge Memorial Park and found Ryan's van and trailer. They found his overturned kayak out in the lake. The water at the spot where it was about 220 feet deep. An angler later discovered his tackle box with his wallet inside, along with his keys and his license. Everything pointed in one direction. What followed was 54 days of searching. Divers went into Green Lake, underwater drones swept the bottom, towable sonar scanned for the body. 3 separate cadaver canine teams worked the shoreline. Search and rescue volunteers showed up day after day to help a community that believed a husband and father had drowned, and Emily publicly grieved her husband. She posted on social media that she would never understand why God had taken Ryan home so soon, but that she was at peace knowing that he was in heaven with his Savior. And while Emily was posting that, while she was accepting condolences and casseroles, Emily's mother quietly discovered that Ryan had left the family with about $80,000 in credit card debt. She and Ryan's own family secretly paid that off. Think about what Emily was carrying. She thought her husband was dead, her 22-year marriage gone. She had 3 teenagers suddenly without a father. The community gathered around her. $80,000 of hidden debt got wiped out by people who loved her enough not to make things worse. And that whole time, she had no idea that her grief was built on a lie designed by the man that she loved. After 54 days, no body had been found, and here's where things start to crack open. A drowning victim who isn't found after 54 days of intensive searching in a well-mapped lake is unusual. Not impossible, but unusual enough to make investigators start wondering and start pulling on a few threads. One of the divers who was looking for Ryan's body actually said to the sheriff about how, joking with him at first, that maybe Ryan was off drinking cocktails on a beach somewhere. But the longer the search went on, the less it became a joke and the more it became a real possibility. There were threads to pull everywhere. When investigators looked at Ryan's laptop, they found that him putting in a new hard drive at the same time he disappeared as quite suspicious. What was he trying to hide? Investigators also ran Ryan's name through some databases, and it came back that his name had been checked by Canadian law enforcement on August 13th, one day after Emily reported him missing. One day later, he was already in Canada. Then investigators started looking further into the laptop. Forensic analysis pulled information off of it, passport photos, records of a second passport, the foreign bank inquiries, the airline gift card, and the financial account changes. All of it were time-stamped to the day he disappeared. And then they found something else, a photo of Katja and records of their messages. By November of 2024, investigators had figured out a way to reach out to Ryan. They contacted him by email using information recovered from some of the devices he had left behind. When that first email from the Green Lake County Sheriff's Office landed in Ryan's inbox in Georgia, he later told investigators, "My heart hit the floor." He thought he'd covered everything, but really, he'd left a trail on a laptop that he left in his own house. From November on, investigators were in near daily contact with Ryan, and they weren't just building a legal case. They were working on him personally. The sheriff described it as pulling at his heartstrings, reminding him of his children, pleading with him to come home before Christmas. They even sent a gospel song and offered to pay for his flight home through his church. What's really interesting here is that faking your own death is amazingly not a crime. If you want to fake your own death, you're allowed to. But what ends up getting you in trouble is lying to the police or thwarting an investigation. But the crimes that Ryan had committed were misdemeanors, and misdemeanors are not something that you can be extradited for. So the sheriff's office had no choice but to try to convince Ryan to come home of his own free will, in the same way that he'd kind of left on his own free will. They couldn't make him come back. Before going public with the news that Ryan had faked his death, the sheriff's office privately told Emily and then asked her to keep it a secret while they kept collecting evidence and trying to reach out to Ryan. And Emily sat with that knowledge. She couldn't tell anyone except eventually the pastors at her church. For weeks, Emily had to carry the fact that her husband was alive and had chosen to leave her and their children, while her community still brought her food and called her a widow. On November 8th, the sheriff went public. He told the entire world, Ryan is alive. He faked his death and he fled the country. On December 10th of 2024, Ryan Borgwardt boarded a plane home. He wasn't excited. He wasn't extradited and he wasn't arrested overseas. He came back voluntarily. When he landed, he turned himself in to the Green Lake County Sheriff's Office. When asked what brought him back, the sheriff said simply, his family, I guess. Before they booked him, investigators sat down with Ryan for 3 hours. He told them that he was a failure. He called the whole thing a crazy emotional dream, and he said that he'd made a mistake. But throughout that entire 3-hour interview, Ryan kept asking about Katja. Was she in trouble? Would she be okay? He said that he'd actually like to go back to Georgia someday and that the cost of living was far cheaper there. He was sitting in a Wisconsin sheriff's office about to be charged with a crime, and he was floating the idea of maybe moving back to the country he'd just returned from. At the very end of the interview, before they took him to his cell, Ryan asked if he could use the Justice Center's Wi-Fi. He wanted to email Katja to let her know that he was okay. A deputy kindly offered to send the email for him. Ryan was charged with 1 count of obstructing an officer, which is a misdemeanor. His bond was set at $500, At his first court appearance, he told the judge that he couldn't afford an attorney. Emily, meanwhile, filed for legal separation within weeks of the truth coming out, telling the court that their 22-year marriage was irretrievably broken. And yeah, you think? I'm not sure there's much coming back from your husband faking that he died. She asked for sole legal custody of their 3 children, and the divorce was final in May of 2025. In August of 2025, Ryan appeared in court for his plea and sentencing hearing. He pled no contest. When given a chance to speak, he said, "I deeply regret the actions that I did that night and all the pain that I caused my family and friends." The prosecution and defense had agreed on 45 days in jail, but Judge Mark Slate looked at Ryan and gave him 89 days, 1 day for every day his deception lasted before investigators made contact with him. The judge put it plainly, Ryan had obstructed law enforcement for a total of 89 days. He was also ordered to pay $30,000 in restitution, which was the cost of the search he forced the county to run for a man who ended up being alive and well in the country of Georgia. Court records show that the money has since been repaid in full. Ryan was released from jail on December 2nd of 2025, and then later in December, he filed a court motion to delete certain digital materials related to his case. The court scheduled a hearing for February 3rd of 2026, but when February 3rd came, Ryan didn't show up and neither did his attorney. Nobody seemed to know where he was. The court dismissed his motion, and as of right now, Ryan's whereabouts are unclear. So there you have it. Ryan Borgwardt spent months planning every detail of his disappearance. The second passport, the replaced hard drive, the life insurance policy, the weather reports, the deepest lake in Wisconsin, the bike in the tree line, the kiddie raft in the dark. He thought he had thought of everything. But in thinking of everything, especially as it relates to the computer, he forgot how suspicious that would look. Normal people who drowned leave behind a digital footprint. What Ryan did leave behind was his family, his wife, and his 3 children. He thought disappearing or dying would be easier than just saying, "Hey, I'm struggling here. We're struggling." And that might be the saddest part. I'm not sure how you rebuild a relationship with your kids after something like this. Hopefully, though, they figure it out, and many years from now, it'll be the weird family story that they tell at Thanksgiving. Hey, remember that year when Dad faked his death? I'm going to hope it ends that way. Okay, guys, that's it for me. Until next time, stay safe, stay careful, and hug the people who would notice if you didn't come home. Bye, guys.